predicted at the beginning of this season, the Oklahoma City Thunder, for the first time in the history of their franchise, at least as far as the Oklahoma City Thunder part is concerned. Obviously, they were the Seattle Supersonics, and I feel really awful for the people in Seattle right now. But for the people in Oklahoma City, this is a great thing. It's the Oklahoma City Thunder are headed to their first NBA Finals in their franchise's history behind another huge game from Kevin Durant.
And we will start there. That has been the buzz around the NBA, that the Thunder are headed to the NBA Finals, but you cannot ever forget the Seattle part of it, and we're not going to allow that to happen on the Real Sports Talk. We are now bringing in Jason Reid, director of the movie Sonicsgate, a Webby Award-winning movie that will air on CNN this year, to talk about this with us. Jason, what's up, man?
Hey, man, thanks for having me on.
No problem, and there's a lot to get to as far as the Seattle part is concerned. And just to start things off, I had a person on Twitter ask me, since Oklahoma City has joined or has made it to the NBA Finals, how much has interest gone up in the overall movie Sonicsgate?
Oh, it's been huge. Basically, when the Thunder first relocated, they, were a 20-win team, as they were their last year in Seattle. But as the team's gotten better, our film has also kind of progressed and has seen further and further interest. We won a Webby Award for Sonicsgate in 2010. CNBC just picked up the rights to air it, and they aired it on national TV at the end of April, and just to coincide with the end of the regular season of the playoffs. So it's been huge in terms of for getting the word out about our film, and that in turn is getting the word out about how our team was robbed and stolen and moved to Oklahoma City, and how Seattle is a basketball city, and we have a giant NBA basketball fan base that's supported our team for 41 years here, and we're going to keep fighting until we get a team back here.
How are people in Seattle reacting now that Oklahoma City is in the NBA Finals? Because obviously you guys have been robbed of that team, but this one's kind of got to be a killer.
Oh, this is really tough. We've watched the Thunder succeed in the playoffs the last couple of years, but ultimately they haven't made it all the way to the NBA Finals. To see them, go to the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history since 1996, at least that's how it was reported in national mainstream media. That's one thing you said in your intro that's actually incorrect. This is their first time in franchise history since the Sonics went in 96. If they win an NBA championship, it's the first time since 1979 when Seattle won, because in the settlement agreement, Clay Bennett caught the team's history as a shared history. And so when they refer to the Thunder, they don't refer to it as they should, as this is their first trip to the finals. They refer to it, as taking Seattle's history, which is extremely hard for Sonics fans up here to watch. We've been rooting pretty hard against Oklahoma City. Our old rivals, the Lakers and the Spurs, we became the biggest fans of, which was the strangest thing in the world for a hardcore NBA basketball fan like myself to be rooting for those teams. But now I find myself rooting for the Heat, because it's impossible to root for a franchise with an owner who lied to the city of Seattle and stole the team.
All right, so that being said, I take it you're obviously rooting for the Heat. How are LeBron James haters treating this series in Seattle?
I think everybody's willing to put that aside for right now. I'm not a huge LeBron James fan myself. I personally, I'm a little bit worried about the Heat's ability to take on the Thunder just because of LeBron's, lack of clutchness, in my opinion. But we'll see. But I think that, if you compare LeBron leaving the city and, taking his talents to South Beach compared to a guy coming in, overpaying for the team, promising to make a good faith effort to keep the team in Seattle, only to, meanwhile, behind the scenes, be working with the NBA and the city of Oklahoma City to get them out of town as quickly as possible. He takes Kevin Durant, who Seattle drafted, who was Rookie of the Year here. Russell Westbrook was also drafted while the Sonics were still in Seattle, even though he didn't play in a Sonics uniform. And so when you ask about, what's the worst villain, I think it's pretty clear for just about everybody in Seattle that LeBron is, peanuts compared to Clay Bennett.
Talking to Jason Reid, director of Sonicsgate, the movie chronicling how the Sonics were essentially stolen from Seattle. Do you guys still support players like Kevin Durant and Nick Collison, or is it you have respect for them but you can't root for them? How do you treat Kevin Durant and Nick Collison, two guys that really just were caught in a bad situation?
Yeah, we definitely do not blame the players at all in this situation. They were pretty much as helpless as the fans in terms of, the team was going to move whether Kevin Durant wanted it or not, and so we love the players. I love watching the basketball of the Oklahoma City Thunder, but it's impossible to root for them as a team and as a franchise when they cut to close-ups of Clay Bennett and Aubrey McClendon, the owners of the Thunder, cheering and celebrating on the sideline or holding up trophies to go to the NBA Finals. As much as you like the players, you can't, root for the franchise that was ripped away from our city. And we should be celebrating our first trip to the Finals since '96 here with the player that was built on the backs of terrible Sonics teams from the 2000s. That's how the Thunder got Durant, was because the Sonics had so many bad teams, and we got the draft pick. And so it's just really, really hard for us to watch this right now.
Yeah, that's certainly understandable. A lot of people talk about how Oklahoma City is kind of like this college town. You get this great feel about the fans there. From a Seattle perspective, how do you feel about the fans in Oklahoma City?
I mean, once again, it's kind of like the players, right? I think the misperception is that Sonics fans are angry at the fans of Oklahoma City, and that's going to be further from the truth. Like, we realize that, yes, NBA basketball is working really well in Oklahoma City, and we don't hold anything against the fans. It's just that it shouldn't have been the Sonics playing in Oklahoma City. Like, it should have been the Hornets who had gone there, or some other team. The NBA should have made the NBA happen there. It shouldn't have come at, sacrificing 41 years of Sonics history for that. The other thing is the Thunder fans, I think are new to this. They got handed a very, very great basketball team, and, it's just we endured lots and lots of losing seasons, and it's a long road ahead with the franchise, and they're still pretty new to cheering on an NBA team compared to the history that the Sonics have.
Jason Reid of Sonicsgate.com. He obviously directed the movie and everything involved with the movie. He was in the movie. Do you get a sense that Seattle is close to getting a team back? David Stern, obviously there was the 5-year thing where Clay Bennett had to pay more money to the city of Seattle if there was not a team there within 5 years. But do you get the sense that there's funding anywhere near, or that it's going to take the prospects of getting a team before anyone's really willing to commit to actually funding an arena?
Actually, there's some big news that kind of broke in February. There's a billionaire from this region, Chris Hansen, who's come forth with a pretty unprecedented arena proposal for the city of Seattle. He's offering $300 million of private money. He's already purchased land right south of Safeco and CenturyLink Field in Seattle, and he's already bought the land, and he has the support of the mayor and the King County executive to build a $500 million arena that essentially comes at no cost to the taxpayer. So it's a pretty dream scenario. We're just waiting to get approval from the city and county councils, which should come this summer at some point. And the hope is, there's no guarantees of an NBA team, but everybody who's seen Sonicsgate and everybody who kind of knows the injustice of what happened in Seattle, I think NBA included, Clay Bennett included, want to remedy this situation because it's a huge black eye for them not having NBA basketball in Seattle and having their actions, and their broken business model and their arena subsidy plans exposed. And I think that if they fix the problem in Seattle, they can kind of get rid of a lot of that bad blood that exists. And so it's a pretty big opportunity, I think. I think we'll be number one on the list. If we have a $500 million arena that's contingent upon getting an NBA team, then I think the NBA is going to work really hard to make it happen. So we're pretty optimistic up here in Seattle. We're having a big rally on Thursday with Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, Blue Stars and Presidents of the USA. Big local bands are playing. We're going to get behind this arena plan, and rather than celebrating Game 2 of the NBA Finals at home, we'll be rallying to bring a team back to Seattle.
Every time I hear someone from Seattle talk about that, it just makes me feel awful because, the Sixers, I'm a Sixers fan, they weren't exactly lighting it up for about a 5-year period there, and I think that Philly's kind of held a bit higher in one of those top 5 city things to the point where they wouldn't lose their team. But I understand the passion in Seattle, and it's just awful to see this happen. Ryan Williams on Twitter asks, do you believe Seattle would support a relocated Sacramento team? Because Sacramento, I think that that's a team that certainly is a candidate to be relocated. It wouldn't be my first pick. Obviously, New Orleans and Charlotte would probably be two more likely teams to be moved. But A, they're not going to move them all the way up to the Northwest area, and B, Sacramento looks like the team that's going to move. Would you support a relocated Sacramento team, or would that kind of feel strange to you supporting someone else's team when you saw someone else have to do that for your team?
Oh, there's no question it would be, not an ideal situation. An ideal situation up here in Seattle would be for the NBA to issue an expansion team, but anybody who's paying attention to the business of basketball knows that there's pretty much a 0% chance of that happening anytime in the near future. And so it's a difficult position that we've been put in as sports fans. We ended our film with Sherman Alexie, the great writer, talking about this very quandary that to get a team, we're going to have to take a team from somewhere else. And, if the Kings happen to relocate to Seattle, of course we will support them and embrace them as the new Sonics. But what else are we going to do? That's what everybody in Oklahoma did. They didn't necessarily like the way Clay Bennett brought them to town, but as you can see, once they're in town and there's a team, the whole city got behind it. And, we're there for the fans and the people of Sacramento. We've been giving them advice for a couple years now on their site with the Here We Stay campaign and everything. And that's really what our movie is. It's a blueprint to other cities, not just the smaller market cities like Sacramento and even Seattle, but cities like Philly. It's not outside the question. If you would have asked me in 2005 or 2006, is there any chance Sonics will ever move from Seattle? I would have said, no way. We have Howard Schultz, the local owner. We have, a history of 40 years of, relatively winning basketball. How could they possibly move it? And they can. If your arena isn't, in top form, if you aren't willing to subsidize it, and they can move the team if it's not making money. And that's the precedent that was set in Seattle. So, we try to help the Sacramento fans. We empathize with them, and we don't want them to lose their team. But the whole reason I've been working for years on this issue, making the film and everything for no profit, is to bring the NBA back to Seattle. So, however that happens, we're here to support it. We don't want to take another team, but unfortunately that's the precedent the NBA set up here.
Yeah, and as Seattle deserves a team over probably at least like 60 or 70% of the cities that have NBA teams. I mean, you look around the NBA, I'm not going to call out anyone's team, but there's certainly cities that are smaller than Seattle and have a smaller market that support a team fine, but I think Seattle could do a better job, especially if they were able to have a contending team like what the Oklahoma City Thunder have turned into. And unfortunately for Seattle, they're probably going to end up having to start over again rather than working with a team that they laid the blueprint for.
Yeah, which is a total shame, but at the same time, if you picture what it's like to have losing seasons, which I've endured, and still maintain a huge fandom for the Seattle Supersonics, or you have no team at all and no one to root for except for to root against Oklahoma and to root for players that used to be Sonics like Way Out or guys from Seattle like Jamal Crawford. It's like I don't have a team to identify with anymore, and it's just really hard as a sports fan to be in this position.
Have there been fans that follow the Oklahoma City team down, and are they looked at in kind of a negative light? Have they become Oklahoma City fans?
Who's that? The Seattle fans?
Yeah, some of the former Supersonics.
I'm gonna say there's probably like a small segment of people who still root for Durant and our former team up here in Seattle, but it's very minimal. I mean, almost entirely everybody is. You go to a bar or something to watch the game, everyone's cheering for whoever the Thunder are playing.
All right, Jason Reid, final question, and this one's probably a tough one for you. Who do you have winning the NBA Finals this year?
Oh, man. I mean, like I said earlier in the interview, I don't necessarily trust LeBron James and his ability to close out an NBA Finals. He's proven that inability, but I think it's going to be the Heat in 6. That's my optimistic thinking, not wanting the Thunder to win. I'll tell you what, though, I'm pretty nervous about Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Harden, and the rest of the Thunder. I think that they stand a very legitimate chance of winning the NBA championship this year. But in my heart of hearts, I'm rooting for the Heat and LeBron, so go Heat.
And hopefully you can enjoy a great NBA Finals regardless of who ends up winning this, because I think it's going to be that. Jason Reid of Sonicsgate. Jason, thanks a lot for joining us, man.
Yeah, go to Sonicsgate.com for all the info.